I was going to say that Nigel Farage is preparing to take flight and campaign in Scotland, and then I realised that's rather an inappropriate thing to say about someone who had such a disastrous experience in the air. But when it comes to wings, and and then I suppose I should think of Claire Rayner's extraordinary 1970s or 1980s series of adverts for I can't remember which organisation it was, but there was a lot of questions being asked at the time. Now with Wings, promoting a famous, let's say, feminine hygiene product, which was a significant moment in advertising history, as it brought attention to these sanitary pads promoting wings. But wings are important, and the pterodactyl, which which is one of the pterosaurs, incorrectly thought actually as a dinosaur, is a flying reptile during the Jurassic period. Pterosaurs, including the pterodactyl, were among the first vertebrates to develop the ability to fly, but they're not considered dinosaurs. Pterosaurs had membranous wings, winged fingers. Pterodactyl, these are your dactyls, these things, and the wings, or the webbed membrane between the fingers, were what gave these creatures flight. I mean, they're a long way off from the insects who survived the first death wave to extinguish life on Earth, and they were the true pioneers of flight, evolving wings 300 million years ago, well before vertebrates like pterosaurs came into existence. And the pterodactyl, of course, was this prominent flyer. Birds and certain dinosaurs, such as the Archaeopteryx, then developed feathers and minimal flight capabilities during the Mesozoic era. But but Nigel Farage's experience of flight in 2010? Maybe it was as late as that. Maybe it was as early as that, 2010, in the run up to that year's general election, and he was involved in this serious plane crash, which, while flying over Northamptonshire, with a banner attached to the light aircraft, which became entangled in the plane's tail, causing it to nosedive, and Farage suffered severe injuries, including a punctured lung, broken ribs, a fractured sternum, and his pilot, Justin Adams, also sustained injuries and legal troubles. In fact, he got into a legal tangle with Farage later, was convicted in 2011, and then found dead in 2013. In a death which wasn't considered suspicious. Anyway, Farage, I don't know why I'm chattering away about wings. Now with Wings, Farage is now planning to sail up to Scotland, which was a place he hadn't ventured into particularly in the last election, and he intends to campaign in Scotland apparently ahead of the 2026 Holyrood elections, which could have significant implications for the political landscape of Scotland and his own public standing, despite his commitment and rather lackluster representation of the people of Clacton in Parliament. I noticed he's made a film standing in front of the Ferris wheel, and then done some outtake shots of that and put those up on Twitter, but it takes more than a few Twitter posts to represent constituencies and constituents. And I just encourage him to do the job that he was appointed to do. And I know there's a move to try and encourage that in Parliament, and encourage parliamentarians not to have secondary jobs that might distract them. Farage's party, Reform UK, has struggled to gain widespread traction, though recent polling suggests they are making inroads, and a Survation study shows that Reform UK is polling at 9% in constituency voting and 8% on a regional list, coming close to the Scottish Conservatives up in Scotland. So maybe there's room for Farage up there. And down here, down in England and Wales, we mustn't forget Wales, Farage's Reform UK party is sort of surging ahead, or I presume its fortunes will decrease if the Conservative Party manages to sort itself out, and Reform UK may end up as a sort of little backwater of right-wing fanaticism, or it may be subsumed into the larger Conservative identity, or indeed the Conservative identity may be subsumed into Farage's racket. But who knows? Anyway, Farage's planned campaign for Scotland won't be without challenges. Scottish politics differed significantly from those in England, with a strong focus on devolution and independence, and Reform UK, and by extension Farage, will need to navigate these complexities to gain the support of a broader base, which remains dominated by the SNP and pro-unionist forces. So he's either got to decide: is he going to back the unionist group? I presume he will, in which case he will further he will further fracture the unionist vote, and therefore presumably support, by implication, he will be adding support to the SNP and the independent lobby. So Farage's aims north of the border may have a counter productive effect to the ones he would intend. That is, if he intends anything noble at all, but I mean, maybe he just intends to get his name around. Another element worth noting is the potential threat to his role at GBNews. So presumably if he doesn't take his Clacton seat seriously, and if he's not allowed to do GBNews, he's got to find another outlet for his narcissism, and that could well be to blossom in Edinburgh and Aberdeen. And his outspoken style, which has drawn attention and controversy on GBNews, but the increased scrutiny on the media outlet and this changing political environment, as well as his own dual role as a politician and a commenter, may in the end become unsustainable. GBNews could face further challenges if Farage's political ventures are seen increasingly as a conflict of interest or a distraction from his major role. I mean, is the politics in the House of Commons a distraction from the GBNews, or is the GBNews a distraction from his role as an elected member for Clacton? It may result him to. It may mean that he has to step back from one of them. I think GBNews is by far the more lucrative activity that he indulges in, and at the moment he's not getting a very good reception in the House of Commons in Westminster. So he could be pressured into stepping back from Clacton or the Channel, especially if his Scottish campaign draws attention away from his other interests. His announcement that he plans to campaign in Scotland, fly up to Scotland ahead of the 2026 elections, that he's acquired wings, adds this new layer of complexity to his political career and his broader aspirations on the political landscape now in Scotland, now with wings. His track record as a representative, as a political representative, has been mixed. Maybe he could become a Scottish MSP and sit in Holyrood. And while Reform UK has been seen as a minor growth, it remains to be seen whether Farage can translate his populist brand into electoral success in a region with distinct political concerns, and at the same time his media career could face risks as he deepens his involvement in political campaigning, with GB News potentially re-evaluating his role in the light of his political activities and the pressure from Labour to dump people who are sidelining, people who are moonlighting for a second salary.